Hello everybody, welcome to Also Rusty Buckets. I'm doing a one game recap today. There are a lot of important games today, but there was one game in particular I decided to watch, which was the Warriors versus the Memphis Grizzlies. So in this video, we're going to be talking about that game, and more specifically, what the Warriors could potentially do in this year's playoffs, presuming that they do not lose in the play-in tournament. Real quick, if you have not already, subscribe to the channel. About 50% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall in that 50%, then subscribe. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. And just to reiterate, if you're on this channel from my main channel, if you want playoff coverage, I'm going to be leaning all the way into making all kinds of content on this channel, reacting to pretty much every playoff game. So if you're looking for that kind of stuff, definitely subscribe. With that out of the way, today let's talk about this Warriors-Grizzlies game. The reason this game is so important is that this game would determine who got the 8th seed and who got the 9th seed. The Grizzlies and Warriors are right. They had the same exact record, and conveniently, they play each other for the last game of the season for the both of them. So that's definitely a nice little spicy bit of drama right there. So now the Warriors are the 8th seed, and the reason why that is important is if you are a 7 or 8 seed in the play-in tournament and you lose a game, you have another opportunity to win and stay in the playoffs. So the way things are organized right now, the Lakers and Warriors would play in game 1, or the Blazers and Warriors would play in game 1, depending on who ends up having the better record between the Lakers and Blazers, because that's still to be determined. But right now it would be the Lakers and Warriors, and if they lose that game, which I would lean towards they probably do, that means they will play the winner of the Grizzlies versus the Spurs, and that's definitely what the order is going to be there. So whoever wins between the Grizzlies and the Spurs, the Warriors will have a chance to play them for the 8th seed in the conference so they can remain in that 8th seed. The Grizzlies could have had that same opportunity and had the second chance, but because they lose this game, they only have one chance. They have to beat the Spurs, and then they have to beat the loser of Lakers versus Warriors. So the Grizzlies are probably not going to make the playoffs. But let's talk about this actual game. The Warriors won by 12 points. Steph Curry had 46, 7, and 9. Draymond was 1 rebound and 1 assist shy of a triple-double. I was interrupted, so quick cut right there. As I was trying to say before I stuttered, the Warriors and Grizzlies game was interesting because right out of the gate, specifically for Steph, he was struggling because Dillon Brooks was really giving him trouble, and the Grizzlies were throwing a defensive scheme at him to try and prevent him from getting like any daylight. And this is nothing new. Steph, by the way, secured a scoring title today, and only him and MJ have ever got a scoring title at the age of 33 and older, so that's a pretty big accomplishment. And the reason that Steph has faced these defenses all season, but the reason why Steph struggled a little bit in this one, especially early, was Dillon played great defense. Memphis was throwing multiple double teams at him, and as usual with the Warriors, Steph had to throw the ball out of these double, sometimes triple teams, and it was up to the players on the Warriors to actually do something once they got the ball. Luckily, in this case today, the ball was finding its way in Draymond's hands. The ball does not have hands. And Draymond was making quick and smart decisions. At the very start of this game, he was very aggressive, attacking the basket, going right at Jaren Jackson, like surprisingly aggressive, not something Draymond typically does. He had a nice spin move and like bounced Jaren off of him and put up a left-hand hook. It was just a very, very good game from Draymond and very aggressive game. 9 assists, does the typical stuff playmaking-wise. And then the reason why Steph was able to heat up later on top of the fact that even though he did play good defense, Dillon Brooks was not going to shut down Steph for the entire game. Dillon, because he was playing aggressive defense, he ended up fouling out. I'm not sure if there's like discourse among Grizzlies fans about whether or not all those fouls were valid. I'm sure that happened because fans are kind of like that sometimes. They seemed fine to me. Maybe 1 or 2 was a little questionable, but for the most part, yeah, Dillon did foul out of this game. And it was funny, anytime something like this happens in a big game, a player who is locking someone up fouls out, like the camera will always pan to the player who fouled out, like in the game, like, yep, this guy fucked up. He fouled out. So for like the entire last 5 minutes of this game, when Steph was going the fuck off, the camera, anytime there was a dead ball, would just pan to Dillon Brooks on the bench just staring into space. Like, you don't need to keep reminding us that Dillon Brooks fouled out. Outside of that, for the Grizzlies, offensively, it was not a particularly good showing, even though they had great defense. Ja Morant, 7 for 21 from the field, who's taken a couple of threes late that were obviously not going in because he's not a good three-point shooter. Valanciunas easily had the best game here. He had a lot of offensive rebounds and tip shots, things like that. 6 offensive rebounds in this one. Jaren Jackson started this game very strong, did not finish particularly strong. And that was about it. Kyle Anderson played okay. And really a big issue for them was that their bench production really wasn't great. Desmond Bane with 8 points, which was fine, but D'Anthony Melton goes 2 for 7. Brandon Clark goes 1 for 4. Terrence Jones 0 for 2. Xavier Tillman 0 for 1. Yeah, not much contribution from the bench in this one, unfortunately, and that was probably their biggest problem, as well as Ja Morant just not shooting well from the field. And on the Warrior side of things, Steph, like I mentioned, goes crazy in the last 5 minutes. He hit some very difficult threes, and it was funny because they continued to do the double team thing, even though it wasn't as effective without Dillon Brooks. But every time, Steph would just pass it to Draymond, reset, and then half of the time he's open, or open enough by Steph Curry standards. And that's something that those two have always had. That connection is fantastic. And that's why Draymond is so perfect next to Steph, because he allows Steph to be effective off of the ball. Because he's such a good playmaker, he's going to find Steph in the right position. And they just very clearly have that connection and that experience of multiple years playing together. And that's really what tore them apart, because Steph was not doing too much damage off the dribble in this one. It was mostly him getting open off of the ball. And most of the time, it was off of Draymond's passes. Jordan Poole. He has 15 points off of the bench, and Jordan Poole is a player who has done really well the past 30 or so games. I pulled up Basketball Reference just to see this. But his last 35 games, ever since he came back from an injury and a couple of DNPs as well, he has averaged 14.7 points, 2.5 assists, 2 rebounds, shooting 43% from the field and 35% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts per game, also 87% from the line. His efficiency is not the best in the world, but he is a very good shot creator, and one of the many complaints that Warriors fans had about Steve Kerr this year is that he was treating Jordan Poole like a spot-up shooter and not a shot creator, and he had a couple of very nice pull-up mid-range shots in this game, a couple of big 3 in the corner late as well. So shout out to Jordan Poole. Also shout out to Juan Toscano Anderson, who played good in this one and just got a new contract extension. That was very nice to see because he deserves it. But yeah, that was this game. The Warriors clinched the 8th seed, Grizzlies down at 9. But I do want to briefly talk about the Warriors and whether or not they can upset a team in the first round. So first of all, I think either way, the Lakers would beat the Grizzlies or Spurs, pretty much guaranteed. So even if the Warriors do beat the Lakers in the 8-7 matchup for the play-in, assuming that Portland does not drop down, the Lakers are probably still going to be making it. But that would be interesting if the Warriors actually won that matchup, because then they go up to the 7th seed, and in the first round, they face the Phoenix Suns. And that is a matchup that I think the Warriors could win. I think the Warriors' overall team has gotten better over time. Jordan Poole has gotten better. Juan has gotten more minutes in the rotation. Not having Kelly Oubre is not great. He may or may not make a return for the playoffs. But Andrew Wiggins is a very good role player. Draymond Green is great, and he elevates himself in the playoffs. And we all know what Steph Curry does. Steph had a great run, which is a big part of why they started winning a lot more. But the depth of this team is a little better than even I gave it credit for back when I made a video on the Warriors, just because both Juan and Poole are really, really solid. And I think if Steph, the determining factor is going to be if Steph has a great series. And it's not hard to potentially see him having a great series. If Steph averages 34 points per game against Phoenix, who's to say they don't beat the Suns? And after that happens, let me pull up the playoff bracket so I get an idea of what the next matchup after that would be. I think, if I'm not being dumb right now, that means that they play the winner of the 3-6 matchup, which right now is Blazers Nuggets. I could see them beating the Nuggets. And maybe even making a Western Conference Finals appearance. Maybe I'm insane, but like I think the team around around Steph right now is the best it has been all season, just because the pieces are finally really figuring themselves out. Little late, but it's happening. And then Steph is just fucking ridiculous. And especially for when teams throw doubles at Steph, having Draymond there to be the decision maker, that makes just a world of difference from when earlier in the season Draymond was missing games and I'd have to watch Warriors games where the decision making was up to Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins. And those guys have their own strengths, but that's not one of them. And having Draymond there for that decision making makes a world of difference for this team and its offense. And the Warriors are a good defense. So Steph has a great offensive series. Players are finishing plays properly. Draymond Green is making good reads, being more aggressive, maybe hitting a three every once in a while. And then they played that good defense. I think they could beat most teams in the conference if Steph just goes ballistic. Now, it's not great to be in the position to be betting on just a guy going ballistic, but it has happened with Steph before. It's also not happened with Steph before, so anything is possible. They could get swept in the first round for all we know, but I think all of it is determined on how good Steph plays in the playoffs, and based on the fact that he just won the scoring title at 33 and just the crazy shit he's done this year, the crazy shit he did in this game in the last couple of minutes, I'm one to bet on Steph Curry, so I think anything is possible with them. At the very least, I would not want to face this team in the first round. Although there's a lot of teams like that in the East or in the West this year, so that's not necessarily unique to them. Anyways, that's it. That's the Warriors. Goodbye.